I thought I knew my wife after 15 years of marriage. We'd built a life together in our small Ohio town, a life full of quiet mornings, Sunday dinners with her parents, and the kind of trust you don't even think to question. Her mom and dad were like my own family, the kind of people you'd call salt of the earth. We celebrated holidays together, helped each other during hard times, and I honestly believed there were no secrets between us. But I was wrong, dead wrong. It started with one simple thing, a girls' trip. My wife and her mother said they needed a little time away, some sunshine, and relaxation. I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? They'd done small trips before. But this one was different. It had a quiet, almost scripted feel to it, like they were acting out a part they'd rehearsed. I noticed the nervous smiles, the averted eyes, the way they spoke as if they'd already decided on the answers to questions I hadn't even asked yet. I didn't know it at the time, but that trip would be the match that set fire to my entire life. Because when they came back, I wouldn't just discover they'd been lying. I'd uncover a betrayal so twisted, so unthinkable, it tied both of them to the same man, and the same devastating secret. My name is Dennis Holbrook, and for most of my life, I thought I understood exactly what it meant to be happy. I'm 40 now, but 12 years ago I took the kind of leap most people only dream about. I left a stable paycheck to open my own butcher shop. Not in some big city with endless foot traffic, but right here in Millfield, Ohio, a place where everybody knows everybody, and if you burn one bridge, the whole town feels the smoke. I started with a beat-up counter, a borrowed grinder, and more debt than I'd like to admit. There were nights I stayed at the shop until midnight, perfecting my spice blends, making sure my cuts were precise. It paid off. Little by little, word spread. Folks came from the next county just to buy my dry-aged steaks, my smoked sausages, and the bacon I cured myself in the back room. They'd tell me I reminded them of the old days, when butchers knew your name and slipped an extra cut into your bag just because. I treated my customers like family, and in a town like Millfield, that kind of respect comes back to you tenfold. Speaking of family, mine seemed like the kind you'd see in a Norman Rockwell painting. I married Tanya Fuller when I was 25 and she was 20. I can still remember the first time I saw her, honey blonde hair catching the sunlight, a laugh that could turn heads, and the kind of confidence that made you believe she'd never had a bad day in her life. She was the girl every guy in town noticed, but somehow, I was the one who got to take her home. Her parents, Vernon and Marlene, were as much a part of my life as my own blood. Vernon ran the local hardware store, a man who could fix anything from a leaky faucet to a broken heart, at least in the eyes of the community. Marlene was the church secretary, the type of woman who knew everybody's business but never let gossip slip past her lips, or so I believed. They were God-fearing, dependable people who raised their daughter to value honesty and loyalty. Or at least, that's what I thought. Our lives ran like clockwork. Tanya helped out at community events, Marlene brought pies to Sunday dinners, and Vernon and I would sometimes sit on his porch after work, swapping stories while the women chatted inside. We celebrated every holiday together, shared every joy, and, when times were tough, leaned on each other without hesitation. If you'd asked me back then, I would have told you I knew my wife better than anyone. I would have said we were solid, that nothing could shake what we'd built. But here's the thing about small-town life, when the cracks finally show, they're not hairline fractures. They're fault lines that run so deep, the ground you've been standing on your whole life can split wide open without warning. The first crack in my perfect little life showed up on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning in March. I was in the shop's back room, breaking down a side of beef like I'd done 1,000 times before, when Tanya walked in. She leaned against the doorframe, casual but with that certain stiffness in her posture, the kind I'd only seen when she'd already made up her mind about something. "Dennis, honey," she started, twirling her wedding ring around her finger. That nervous tick of hers was small but unmistakable. Mom and I were thinking about taking a little trip together. I kept my knife moving, more out of habit than calmness. "Where to?" "Oh, just down to Florida. Clearwater, actually. You know how Mom's been stressed lately with Dad's blood pressure acting up. We figured some beach time would do us both good." Her voice was light, almost rehearsed. And that was the first thing that stuck out. Tanya wasn't the type to rehearse conversations with me. We'd always just talked. But now, she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "How long?" I asked. "Just a week, maybe 10 days tops. The resort had a cancellation, and Mom really needs this." On the surface, it made sense. Vernon's health had been giving them trouble, and Marlene had always been tightly wound. But something about the way Tanya delivered the news, too smooth, too quick, rubbed me wrong. I wiped my hands on my apron and finally looked at her fully. "When are you leaving?" "Next Monday, if that's okay." The speed of it was another red flag. A week's notice would have been more like her style. This was less than a week. And yet, with everything she was saying, it would have made me look paranoid if I objected. So I smiled, nodded, and said, "Sure, babe, you two go ahead and have fun. I'll hold down the fort here." Her face lit up, maybe too much, and she practically bounced over to kiss my cheek. "Thanks, honey, you're the best." But when she walked out, that nagging weight settled in my gut, the kind you can't explain but know you'd be a fool to ignore. The house felt different while Tanya and Marlene were gone. Not just quiet, empty, in a way I couldn't shake. I filled the days with extra work at the shop, took on special orders, and even did some long overdue maintenance. Still, there was this low hum in my chest, like my instincts were whispering that something wasn't right. They were gone just over a week, and when the day came for them to return, I was in the garage sharpening my knives. That's when I heard the crunch of gravel in the driveway. I looked through the window and saw Vernon's truck, but instead of him driving away, he was unloading luggage. Tanya and Marlene stood off to the side, whispering to each other like they didn't want anyone to overhear. I stepped out to meet them. "Hey there, stranger," Tanya said, smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. "How was Florida?" I asked, wrapping her in a hug that felt more like I was hugging a mannequin, stiff, cold. "Oh, it was wonderful. The beach was gorgeous, and Mom got some color back in her cheeks." Marlene appeared in the doorway behind her, smiling a little too quickly. "Dennis, thank you so much for letting us have that time. It was exactly what we needed." It was all fine until Tanya fidgeted with her purse strap and dropped the next piece of the puzzle. "Actually, Mom and I were thinking we should probably see a doctor tomorrow. You know, just to make sure we didn't pick up any bugs while traveling. Beach resorts can be kind of germy." I frowned. "You both feeling okay?" "Oh, we feel fine," Marlene said quickly, almost too quickly. "Just being cautious. Better safe than sorry." Tanya nodded, her enthusiasm suddenly a little too practiced. "Exactly. Standard procedure after trips." That was news to me. In 15 years of marriage, I couldn't recall a single time Tanya had voluntarily gone to the doctor after traveling. In fact, I'd had to push her to keep up with her annual checkups. I offered to go with them, but Tanya's refusal was instant. "Oh no, it's just routine women's health stuff. You'd be bored out of your mind in a waiting room." Marlene laughed along, but it was the hollow kind of laugh that never touches the eyes. I let them go, but the unease was growing. And deep down, I knew this wasn't about germs at all. This was about something they didn't want me anywhere near. The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Call it intuition, call it paranoia, but my gut had never steered me wrong. Around noon, Vernon stopped by the shop. That alone was unusual. He didn't just drop in during business hours unless he needed something important. He leaned on the counter and said, "Dennis, you mind if I ask you something man-to-man?" I set down the cleaver I'd been using. "Shoot, don't you think it's odd that the girls suddenly need to see a doctor after their trip? Marlene's never been the type to rush to a medical appointment unless she's practically dying." I felt a strange kind of relief. I wasn't the only one thinking it. "Yeah, it struck me as strange, too. What are you thinking?" Vernon rubbed his jaw, looking more uneasy than I'd ever seen him. "Hell if I know, but something about this whole trip felt different. She was acting secretive before they even left. And now this, I didn't need more convincing. You want to drive over there with me, just to make sure everything's okay?" He nodded without hesitation. We pulled into Dr. Brennan's clinic 20 minutes later. The parking lot was nearly empty, but Marlene's sedan was right there in the front row. We decided to wait in the truck, but 20 minutes of watching that glass door stay shut was too much for my patience. We went inside and took seats in the waiting area, acting like we were just there by coincidence. The receptionist barely looked up from her computer, which made it easy to hear voices down the hall. Dr. Brennan stepped out of an exam room, speaking to a nurse just loud enough for us to catch the words. "Well, considering the circumstances of conception, we'll need to run additional tests for both patients. It's not every day we see a mother and daughter in this particular situation." Vernon went rigid beside me. My heartbeat picked up, and I felt heat rising up the back of my neck. The nurse asked, "Should we schedule them for the same follow-up appointment?" "Yes," Dr. Brennan replied. "Given that they're both pregnant by the same man, we'll want to monitor them closely. This is definitely an unusual case." The words hit like a freight train. Both pregnant, same man. My hand started shaking. Vernon's face drained of all color. We didn't say a word, but I knew we were both thinking the same thing. Our wives hadn't just been unfaithful. They'd been sharing the same lover. And that was the moment I knew life as I'd known it was over. We didn't speak a single word on the drive back. Vernon gripped the steering wheel like it might splinter under his hands, his knuckles white, his jaw locked. I just stared straight ahead, my mind replaying the doctor's words over and over until they burned into me. Both pregnant, same man. It was so outrageous it barely felt real, and yet, deep down, it explained the tension, the secrecy, the lies. When we pulled into my driveway, Marlene's car was already there. They'd beaten us home. You ready for this? Vernon asked, his voice low. Been ready for 15 years, I muttered, stepping out. Just didn't know it. We walked into the kitchen, and there they were, Tanya and Marlene, sitting at the table like they were planning their next move. Their expressions were calm, but too calm. Like poker players bluffing on a bad hand. Dennis, Tanya said coldly, I think you owe me an apology for that embarrassing scene at the clinic. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. The only thing I owe you is the truth. And I think it's time you gave me some. Marlene's smile faltered. We already told you the truth. You misunderstood what you heard. Vernon's voice was a knife. Did we? Because what I heard was pretty damn clear. 2 pregnant women, same father. Tanya laughed, the brittle, glass-breaking kind of laugh she used when she was cornered. Dad, you're being ridiculous. Even if it were true, which it's not, what makes you think it has anything to do with us? I leaned forward, holding her gaze. Because innocent people don't run, and you 2 practically sprinted out of that clinic. We left because you were embarrassing us, she snapped. Making wild accusations in public. Then prove me wrong, I said evenly. Call Dr. Brennan right now and authorize him to share your test results with me. Her jaw tightened. I'm not doing that. My medical information is private, especially from a husband acting like a paranoid lunatic. Vernon slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing in the small kitchen. Enough games, Marlene. Are you pregnant or not? Her lower lip trembled. Vernon, please don't shout at me. Answer the question. Tanya reached over, gripping her mother's hand. Mom, you don't have to answer anything. They can't force us to. Yes, Marlene whispered, cutting her off. I'm pregnant. The air in the room went dead still. Vernon's face turned ashen. How far along? 8 weeks, she said, tears welling up. I turned to Tanya. Your turn. She glared at me with pure venom. Go to hell, Dennis. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. I stood slowly, walked to the drawer, and pulled out my phone. Fine. I'll call Dr. Brennan myself. You can't do that, Tanya snapped. Patient confidentiality doesn't apply when I'm asking about my own wife's medical condition. I started dialing, and that's when her voice cracked. Wait, I stopped, looked at her. Yes, she said, almost spitting the word. I'm pregnant too. Vernon sat down like his legs had given out. Jesus Christ, he muttered. And now there it was, the truth, stripped bare. Both of them are carrying another man's child. And neither of them was ready to say who that man was, not yet. The silence after Tanya's admission felt heavy enough to crush the room. My pulse was thudding in my ears, but my voice stayed steady. Who's the father? I asked. Tanya's eyes narrowed, that familiar defiance flashing in them. That's none of your business anymore. None of my business. I repeated slowly. My wife is carrying another man's child, and you think that's none of my business? She lifted her chin like she was daring me to push further. We're getting divorced anyway. What does it matter who the father is? That was news to me. When did we decide that? I decided it 6 months ago, she said coolly. I just hadn't figured out how to tell you yet. Across the table, Vernon was staring at his daughter like he'd never seen her before. Tanya, what the hell happened to you? I grew up, Dad. I realized I wasn't happy living this boring, predictable life. Marlene reached for her daughter's hand. Sweetheart, maybe we shouldn't. Shouldn't what, Mom? Tanya cut in sharply. Tell the truth. They already know we're pregnant. Might as well tell them the rest. A chill ran down my spine. What rest? Tanya's mouth curled into a smile, but it wasn't warm. It was the coldest expression I'd ever seen on her. We didn't go to Florida, Dennis. We went to Las Vegas. Why? My voice came out lower than I expected. To meet someone. Who? Vernon demanded, his voice like gravel. Marlene looked at the table. Someone from online. We'd been talking to him for months. It felt like my mind was trying to put puzzle pieces together that didn't even belong to the same picture. Both of you. You were both talking to the same man online. Tanya nodded, almost proud. He's nothing like you boring small-town men. He's sophisticated, successful, knows what he wants, and what he wanted was both of us. I felt disgust twist in my gut, and I'm guessing he got it. He appreciates us, Marlene said defensively. He makes us feel special. Vernon pushed his chair back so hard it scraped the floor. You're both sick. This is disgusting. Don't be such a prude, Dad, Tanya said lightly. It's the 21st century. People have different kinds of relationships now. My voice cut through the air like a blade. What's his name? The room went still. Neither of them spoke. I said, what's his name? Finally, Tanya looked at me, and for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw something almost like fear in her eyes. Her voice was quieter now, but the words still landed like a blow. His name is Marcus Webb, and he's going to take care of both of us better than either of you ever did. The moment Tanya said his name, something in me snapped into focus. Marcus Webb. I wasn't going to let him just be a ghost in the shadows, not after what he'd done. Give me his phone number, I said flatly. Tanya folded her arms. Why? Because I'm going to have a conversation with him. Dennis, please don't do anything stupid, Marlene said quickly, wringing her hands. Vernon laughed, short, bitter, and humorless. Stupid? The stupid part was trusting you two in the first place. Tanya sighed like I was being unreasonable, then finally rattled off the digits, her voice dripping with reluctance. I didn't waste a second. I dialed and hit speaker. The line rang 4 times before a smooth, almost oily voice answered. This is Marcus. Marcus Webb, I asked. Who's asking? Dennis Holbrook. I believe you know my wife, Tanya. There was a long pause, the kind that tells you someone's calculating their next move. I'm not sure what you're talking about. I cut him off. Don't play dumb. You got my wife pregnant. You got her mother pregnant. Now we're going to discuss what you're going to do about it. Another pause, then a low chuckle. Look, buddy, I think you've got the wrong guy. I don't know anyone named Tanya. I glanced at Tanya, her face had gone pale. Really? Because she's sitting right here, and she seems to know you pretty well. There must be some misunderstanding, he said smoothly. The only misunderstanding, I snapped, is you thinking you could use my family and walk away. Where are you right now? That's not any of your business. Everything about you is my business now. You made it my business the second you decided to play house with my wife and mother-in-law. Marcus's tone shifted, colder, harder. I'm going to hang up now. Don't call this number again. Hang up if you want, I said, my voice steady. But I'm going to find you anyway. And when I do, we're going to have a face-to-face conversation about your responsibilities. The line went dead. Vernon was staring at the phone like it was something toxic. He just denied knowing them. Or maybe, I said slowly, he was never planning to take responsibility in the first place. Marlene's voice broke. But, he said he loved us. He said we were going to be a family. Vernon's jaw clenched. You two got played by a professional liar. And in that moment, I knew, this wasn't going to end with a phone call. I was going to track him down, and I wasn't going to stop until I looked him in the eye. Once the call ended, the kitchen fell into a thick, ugly silence. Tanya and Marlene sat there pale and tense, whispering half-hearted excuses to each other, but I was already pulling out my phone. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. It pays to know the right people, and in a small town like Millfield, I'd built connections over the years, not just with customers, but with folks who could get information others couldn't. One of them was my buddy Jake, who ran the local computer repair shop. Most people thought he just fixed broken laptops, but I knew better. Jake had the kind of skills that could dig up a man's life story in under an hour. I stepped out onto the porch and called him. Jake, I need you to find someone. Name's Marcus Webb. Might be using an alias. An hour later, Jake called back, his voice carrying that mix of disgust and disbelief. Your boy Marcus Webb. Real name is Marcus Weber, and he's a piece of work. Been married for 8 years to a woman named Sandra Weber in Cincinnati. 2 kids. Oh, and here's the kicker. 3 different women in 3 different states have filed paternity suits against him in the past 5 years. All of them dropped when he disappeared. I felt my blood pressure spike. What else? He's got an office job in Cincinnati, but from what I can see, he's on the road a lot. Probably his cover for these extracurricular activities. I've got his home address. You want it? Send it. When I walked back inside and laid it all out for Vernon, his face darkened. So, he's a serial predator. And our wives fell for him hook, line, and sinker. Marlene shook her head, tears in her eyes. That can't be right. Marcus told us he was single. He showed us pictures of his apartment. Probably a rental he keeps for his little hunting expeditions. I cut in. Vernon turned to me. We're going to Cincinnati. Tanya's voice shot up an octave. What? No, you're not. That's crazy. What are you going to do? I'm going to make sure his wife knows exactly what kind of man she married. And I'm going to make sure he understands that his actions have consequences. Dennis, think about this. Tanya started, but I didn't give her the chance. I have thought about it, and I'm done sitting here while he hides behind lies and smooth talk. He took something from me. From both of us, I said, nodding to Vernon. And I'm going to take away the one thing he can't get back, the lie he's living right now. Vernon stood, his face like stone. Let's go. 3 hours later, we were pulling into a quiet suburban neighborhood in Cincinnati, Marcus's address glowing on my phone screen. His house looked like the picture of family bliss, a 2-story colonial, kids' toys scattered on the lawn, and a minivan in the driveway. It made me sick to think about the double life he'd been running from behind that front door. Vernon cut the engine. You ready? Dead sure. We stepped out, walked up the path, and rang the bell. A pretty brunette woman answered, holding a toddler on her hip. Can I help you? I met her eyes. Mrs. Weber, my name is Dennis Holbrook. I need to talk to you about your husband. Sandra Weber's smile faltered instantly. Is Marcus in some kind of trouble? She asked, shifting the toddler on her hip. Ma'am, could we come in? I said gently. This is going to take a few minutes to explain. She hesitated, then stepped aside, leading us into a neatly kept living room. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8, was sitting on the couch watching cartoons, oblivious to the tension creeping into the air. Sandra set the toddler in a playpen and turned to us. Alright, what's going on? I took a breath. Your husband has been having affairs with my wife and her mother. Both of them are pregnant, and they claim Marcus is the father. The color drained from her face so fast it was like watching someone fade in real time. That's impossible. Marcus travels for work, but he wouldn't. Vernon pulled out his phone and held it out. This is him, with our wives, in Las Vegas, last month. Sandra stared at the photos, her hand covering her mouth. Oh my God, that's really him. There's more, I said quietly. We've learned he's done this before. 3 other women in 3 other states have filed paternity suits against him in the past 5 years. All dropped when he disappeared. Sandra's hands trembled. I'm 8 months pregnant with his 3rd child, and he's out there starting other families. Her voice cracked, but then it hardened. That bastard. Vernon leaned forward. Mrs. Weber, we're going to the police. He's committed bigamy, fraud, you name it. Will you help us? Her eyes were wet, but there was steel in her voice now. Absolutely. I'll testify. I'll do whatever it takes. We spent the next hour trading information, piecing together the web Marcus had spun. When we left, she was already on the phone with a divorce attorney. The drive back felt different, lighter somehow, like we'd taken the first brick out of the wall Marcus had built around himself. We'd exposed him to the one person who could hurt him most, his wife. Back in Millfield, we walked into my kitchen to find Tanya and Marlene exactly where we'd left them. Tanya's eyes flicked to me nervously. Well, how did it go? His wife is filing for divorce, I said simply. And she's cooperating with the police investigation. Both women went pale. Police investigation, Marlene whispered. Marcus Weber is a con artist and a bigamist, I said flatly. And you two are star witnesses. Tanya's jaw set. We're not testifying against him. I stared at her, my disgust unfiltered now. Even after everything, you're still protecting him. He's the father of my child, Dennis. I won't. Vernon's voice was full of something between heartbreak and rage. Tanya, how did you become this person? She didn't answer. She just stood, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door. Marlene followed, leaving Vernon and me in the wreckage of 2 marriages. Vernon asked quietly, think we'll ever see them again? I shrugged. Honestly, I hope not. 6 months later, my life didn't look anything like it used to, and I was fine with that. The divorce was finalized. The house Tanya and I had shared was sold, and I'd opened a new butcher shop on the other side of town. Word of what happened had spread, and instead of driving customers away, it seemed to draw them in. Men especially would stop by, wanting to hear the story firsthand, sometimes sharing their own experiences with betrayal. I hired 2 full-time employees and was even considering a second location. Turns out cutting dead weight, in business and in life, was good for the bottom line. Vernon had sold the hardware store and moved to Florida, where he'd reconnected with an old high school girlfriend whose husband had passed away the year before. Every time we talked, I could hear the peace in his voice. You know the best part, he told me over our last coffee before the move. I sleep through the night now. No more lying awake, wondering what Marlene was hiding. As for Tanya and Marlene, they vanished not long after leaving that day in my kitchen. Word through the grapevine was they'd moved to Atlanta, raising their children alone after Marcus's so-called support evaporated the moment he was arrested. I didn't feel sorry for them. They'd made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. Marcus Weber didn't escape either. 3 months after our Cincinnati trip, he was arrested. Sandra wasn't the only wife. The FBI uncovered 2 other active marriages in different states. Bigamy, fraud, identity theft, the charges stacked high, and for once, he was trapped. The local paper dubbed him the heartbreak public bigamist, and when they asked for my comment, I told them exactly what I thought of men who prey on vulnerable women. I also warned other husbands to trust their instincts when something felt wrong at home. Then one evening, just before closing the shop, a woman came in. Early 30s, honest eyes, calloused hands that told me she knew hard work. "I know you're about to close," she said with a shy smile, "but I was hoping to get some advice about smoking a brisket for my dad's birthday." We talked for 20 minutes about cuts of meat, marinades, and the slow art of a good smoke. She laughed at my bad jokes, asked smart questions, and when she left with a brisket in her bag, she also left with my phone number. Her name was Rachel. She turned out to be everything Tanya wasn't: honest, loyal, and genuinely interested in building something real. And that's when I realized, sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is having his old life burned to the ground, because it clears the space for something better to grow in its place. Betrayal like this doesn't just break your heart, it changes the way you see everything. I thought I knew my wife, her family, and the life we'd built together, but the truth was, I only knew the version they let me see. And when the mask finally slipped, it revealed something far uglier than I ever imagined. In the end, Marcus Weber got what he deserved, Vernon and I got our piece, and Tanya and Marlene, well, they got exactly what they'd earned. I can't say I'm grateful for what happened, but I am grateful for where it led me, to a life where I no longer wonder what's being hidden behind closed doors. If there's one thing I learned, it's this: never ignore your instincts. They're not paranoia, they're the alarm bells your heart rings when the truth is trying to get your attention. But now I want to hear from you. If you were in my shoes, would you have hunted Marcus down, or walked away without looking back? Let me know in the comments, because I think a lot of people would handle this very differently.